Okay, as promised, I'm going to go ahead and go through some of these partner problems. And some of them I'm going to solve for you. Some of you need to finish solving. So I'm going to have some version A and version B. I did at least 1 and 2 in every single class. Some of us, we got all the way through 4 and all the way starting number 5. So let's just look at the first one. On version A, it says that you have a square window, which means it would be a side times a side to give us our area. But we decided that they decided they're going to reconstruct this. So they're going to add 3 to the width, and then they're going to add 2 to the length. This is the same on both A and B versions until we get to the area part. So in order to find out what this would equal, the area, I'd have to multiply the side by the side. So a binomial times a binomial. In chapter 7, we learned, actually in chapter 6, is box, FOIL, or stack. So I'm going to go ahead and use box. So I get s squared and plus 5s plus 6. And what does that equal? That equals the area of the new window, which is 30. Okay? On the B version, we do the same thing because they're still going to add 3 and then they're going to add 2. And we box, FOIL, and stack, and we get the same value of s squared plus 5s plus 6. But this one equals 42 instead. Now we need to solve. In order to solve for s, the equation must equal 0. So we subtract the 30 from both sides, and we subtract the 42 from both sides. And now we see that this is a simple Xbox scenario. You can pause the video here and try your Xbox, but you can also keep watching. So two numbers that multiply to be negative 24 and add to be 5 will be 8 and negative 3. And then I have to solve when they equal 0. And obviously when I subtract 8 from both sides, I can't have a negative side. So I know this is not going to be a solution. So it must be the other term, which is x minus 3. When I solve, I get positive 3. I can have a positive distance. So I check that out, and I see that if I were to substitute that in, that would work, because 3 plus 3 is 6, and 3 plus 2 is 5, and the new area was 30, and 6 times 5 is 30. But it only asked for the old length, which was 3. Okay? Then we try the next one. If you have the B version, two numbers that multiply to be negative 36 and add to be 5 will be 9 and negative 4. And then we solve when they equal 0. Obviously, it can't be negative 9. That's not going to be a solution because you can't have a negative distance of the side of a window. So we try s minus 4, and we solve, and we get 4, which also makes sense because when you substitute in 4, we see that 4 plus 2 would be 6, and 4 plus 3 would be 7, and 4 times 7 is 42, which is the area. Let's look at our next question. We see number 4 that we have a rectangle of a garden that's 7 by 12 for the B version, and we're adding an unknown value, right? But we do know what the area is. So again, we have to box, FOIL, or stack to find out what the two sides multiplied would equal. And we see that that's going to equal 126. On the A version, I'm going to go ahead and solve for this first. I go ahead and isolate so that equals 0. And then I'm looking for two terms that multiply to be negative 14 and add to be 19. Right? You solve by factoring. On the A version, same thing, but one side is 5 and the other is 12, and you're adding an unknown, and then you need to box, FOIL, or stack to find out what this multiplies to be. And we see that it's going to be x squared plus 17x plus 60. This one's going to equal to be 120. So again, we need to solve the equation when it equals 0. So we move the 120 over to the other side, and we go ahead and use Xbox to find two terms that multiply to be negative 60 and add to be 17. And then we solve those when they equal 0 to find the logical conclusion. Obviously, a side of a planter cannot be negative 20. So we try our other value, which turns out to be 3. But the question asks for what is the new width and the new length. So you have to substitute in that X value that you find and get the new dimensions. So the A version, it will be 8 by 15. Let's look at number 5. On number 5, we have a swimming pool with a walkway. We see that we have the walkway plus the width and the walkway plus the length, getting us another binomial times a binomial to find the area of x squared plus 11x plus 30 equals, on this pool, it's 72. On the other two, it equals something else, right? On the B value, when I do this, I'm going to get x plus 5 and x plus 4. And I go ahead and do my box FOIL or stack, and I end up with x squared plus 9x equals 20 when it equals 90 this time, and I solve. When I go ahead and solve, after you factor and you find out the right one, remember that you're going to be solving for both of the x's together. So you're going to have to divide by 2 in order to get the right answer. For example, let's say you find that x equals 6. Well, that answer is probably right, but you're going to have to divide it by 2 because there's 2 x's on each side of that pool, right? So make sure you divide by 2 and get that right answer. The answer is not 6, by the way, so I just don't want to give that away. All right, number 6. Doing the B version first here, I see that I have a cliff diver. We have the cliff is going to be the height, the water is going to be the x value, and it's always the height over time that will matter. It gives us this equation. We substitute in our velocity here is 8 and our starting point, which is 24. The cliff diver dives in and is asking us how long will it take, right, to hit the water. So we need to go ahead and solve for these equations. We can take out a GCF. If we do that, I'm going to go back here. We could take out a GCF. We could use quadratic formula, whatever it is, but you need to solve for the x's. One's going to be a negative number because it'll be over here if this was a perfect number, and that's not going to be reasonable on this side, but one will be a positive number, and that will be our solution. Next, we have an equation of a acrobat being shot out of a cannon, and they tell us that this time we have the gravitational pull. His velocity is 50, his starting is 4, but when he hits the net at 10 feet in the air, so it's not going to equal 0, it's going to equal 10 because they're telling us the end height. So we have to solve for that end height. The B version says that he goes at 34 feet per second and he starts at 4, but he lands at 8 feet in the net. And we go ahead and solve for those because we have to move over the value and solve when they equal 0. Now we have a basketball scenario where they're using a shot, a little slingshot to throw out these balls into the crowd, and they're saying when the height is 13, what will happen here? So we set the equation to equal 13, and on the second version it's when it's 17. So you have to just set that to h equaling those values, and you solve for the same way that we have been solving, right? Nothing much has changed here. We just need to go ahead and isolate it when it equals 0. Then you can choose at this point, when you get to this place, you can either take out a GCF, you can use quadratic formula, however you choose to factor these, and we'll finish up in class. Alrighty, if you're having a struggle, don't forget there is warrior time tomorrow, And you can do hard things, and because you're smart. And more than that, you are enduring, and you are resilient, and you're strong. All right, see you in class. Bye.